Dizzy is another set play zoner that has plenty of tools to control practically every part of the screen. She's one of those characters that are easy to pick up but hard to master. At a glance she may seem simple, but she can use her tools to control the pace of the match, forcing the opponent to approach, or set up to make her approaches difficult to contest. As always, let's start off with her normals. As usual, Dizzy's 5p is a solid anti-air, but whiffs on crouchers. She does get a good combo on hit. 2p is a bit stubby, but is one of your main counterpokes. 5k is a solid mid poke having above average range and can always lead to a knockdown with 2d. It is also high enough to make it usable as an anti-air that reaches farther than her 5p and 6p, but it's a bit situational. 2k is her quick low at 6 frames, but may be a bit stubbier than you'd expect. This can be made up for with her fast dash speed, but you'll need to get used to the range. Farslash is a great poke, especially after the latest patch, making it practically entirely disjointed. It's a bit slower than average at 12 frames, but with the range and disjoint it's very good. It combos into 2-1-4-S, but can be a bit finicky sometimes, needing to be cancelled into right after the first hit. It won't combo into the spike or wild assault on normal hit. Despite looking like a low, 2S is a mid, but is also very disjointed and only 10 frames with 6 active frames, making it good for controlling space. The range is significantly less than Farslash, but can't be low profiled and is larger than her K normals. It can be a bit more difficult to convert into anything from far range 2S compared to far range 5k, so it'll take some getting used to. 5H is an interesting normal. It has pretty good range and a good disjoint, but it hits 3 times. If the last hit connects, it puts them in the frozen state, but when playing around its range, it can easily push them out of the range before the third hit, so you'll need to go into 2-1-4-S instead. It can also hit low profile options, but it's not very consistent. Also, a good way to visualize the distance if it'll freeze them is if they're in 5p range. 2H has a good anti-air hitbox with a big disjoint, but it's so slow you'll never really want to use it in neutral, especially when anti-airing. If you do somehow get it, the reward is really good. 2D is a great normal. Being a huge low at 12 frames, it's great at controlling space and catching people dash blocking to approach, but it does have a good amount of recovery, so don't throw it out too much. The knockdown, even from max range, lets her set up plenty of options for strong neutral or offense. For a zoner with the typical weaknesses of IEDs and jump-ins beating many options, her 6p is a bit underwhelming. It is still a good anti-air option, just be careful the ranges you plan to use it, and remember that it's on the slower side at 12 frames. Her JP is fairly good, being a down forward angled attack, letting it hit multiple times from an IED if they're standing, but it's best to do IED FD to get a bit lower. IED JK also hits down forward, which is nice, but if you want to be plus enough to act on it well, you'll need to hit it lower. Same as before, with IED FD is best, or even a dash jump. JP is her best air-to-air button, letting you string people to the ground. JS has a great hitbox, but is too slow to do rising, so options like IED back JS are great to cover space. JH is mostly useful from IEDs if it's used at all, but overall none of her air normals work against crouchers when done immediately from an IED. Most people will stand anyways, but it's best to get in the habit of IED FD just to make it consistent. JD is a bit unique in that it halts your air momentum and launches a horizontal projectile. It'll be a useful tool to cover the airspace as you set up her strong grounded options. You also can air dash out of it to do some surprise offense that may even stuff their 6p attempt as they stand up, but if they block it early, it'll be best to just fall back and use other options. Dizzy has a spike with 236S and 236H that cover about a quarter of the screen and 3/4 of the screen. The hitbox is tall enough to hit normal jumps and extends more horizontal on the ground than you may think. On hit, it puts them in the frozen state, which is very important for combos and setups. While these are very strong, there's a lot of recovery, so missing, especially putting one behind them, can open you up for an easy counter hit. Using JD along with spikes can be a good way to stop them from jumping at you. The other main use is once they're out, if you hold forward and press the button again, it creates a layer of ice on the ground. Doing this adds 30 frames of recovery, so it can be a risk depending on where they block it or if they block the spike. This ice reduces acceleration and friction, making characters much slower to close distances, especially when using moves that are typically quick and far-reaching. But Dizzy is very fast and keeps momentum, making her neutral even stronger. If their fast option doesn't touch the ground, then it doesn't impact it, like Bandit Revolver. The other main change once the ice floor is up is that knockdowns now trigger the end of the ice floor, which pops the character up for a longer knockdown time. But the opponent can trigger this on you too, so it works both ways. Also, once the ice floor is set, you can't reset the timer. It will either go away when a knockdown happens, or when the timer is up, then you can do it again. Use this imbalance in speed to your advantage, and make sure to use the dash momentum to approach with dashing normals that carry you much farther, drastically increasing the effective range. It even makes 5H much more likely to connect all 3 hits, triggering the frozen state. On to the next special is 236K, which is a tracking projectile that causes a hard knockdown on hit. It's good in the far range and close range, but probably not the best in the mid-range. It has a hitbox on the flick up before the projectile launches, which makes it good up close, and its plus on block making it useful for pressure. The tracking can be a bit iffy when they're jumping around, but it's still really good. And it beats non-super projectiles, making it great in zoning wars. She also has two other projectiles, 214P and 214K, that are slow on startup, but slowly travel either the ground or the air and activate once the opponent is within their range and zone. The air version will only activate if they go airborne. While they are strong, they do go away if they get hit, so they can be useful to approach behind or with, but they aren't an insurance policy. 2-1-4-S is a very strong mid poke, especially with the recent buff. Being 15 frames and -8 with pushback, while having half of its range as a disjoint and leading to a hard knockdown that sends them full screen, this will be one of the most used and most important tools for neutral. You will need to be careful of certain ranges you use it against certain characters. Practically speaking, you won't be punished on block unless you do it basically point blank for some reason. Even if you aren't using this to poke, it'll be what your pokes confirm into most of the time. It can be 6P'd, but it's unlikely they'd commit to it at the ranges you'd use this move, especially when far slash can beat 6P. The more likely reasons you'd get hit out of it are low profiles or IEDs. 214P will both stop IEDs and can even combo from the 214S, so it's a nice pairing. 214S can be useful as a counterpoke against space pressure, especially against people who like to backdash after their turn ends. 214H is the slower, larger, more damaging version, but is almost exclusively used in optimized combos or situations where you're trying to chip them out. Though it can be useful when the ice floor is down too. You do get a good knockdown to set up more neutral options, but 214S will be used much more often. 22H are the Wings of Light. They activate about 10 seconds after the startup and deal unblockable, unscaled damage until your meter runs out. It does 90 damage per second with a maximum of 270 if you have full meter, and will do that much damage against anyone at any point of health since it ignores guts and defensive modifiers. Though it will at best bring them down to 1 HP, you'll need to do that last damage yourself. The wings will go away if you get hit or if you decide to cancel them with 22H again, though the only reason I could think you'd want to do it is to reduce recovery on a move by canceling, but I've never seen it done. She has a typical 50 meter super that's invul and has decent horizontal range, but comes at the price of being slower than average, making it easier to safe jump or safe jab. But it's nice that she has an invincible option as a zoner, and that she gets a meaty spike after it. Her other super costs 100 meter, so you won't use it often, but it reaches full screen and does a ton of damage, though it doesn't have invul until frame 19 when the super freeze happens. Dizzy's round start is pretty good thanks to far slash being so disjointed, since it can clash and punish 6Ps and beat typical round start options that don't quite reach you. It seems to only really lose to low profiles, since walking back to try to whiff punish still makes them block. Something to keep in mind when playing neutral is that Dizzy is really quick on the ground. It's important to start to get a feel for using dashing options to approach and control space. Dash 5K is the lower risk mid-range option, but she also has a larger than average range for where close slash triggers in proximity. So while making use of dash up far slash and 2S in the mid-range, dashing a bit deeper may just land you a close slash. And since you have so many disjoints and high speed, you can get away with run-up throws since they're likely to play more defensive. Deep dash 2K is good, and even a quick dash into 2D is nice since it's such a far-reaching low it can catch people flinching. Of course, adding range to 2-1-4-S is great too. As mentioned before, JS isn't great from a jump normal, but IED back JS can cover space fairly well, and it can even be used as a throw bait from deep dashes, though it's more risky than the other options. Remember that the ranges you'll be using far slash likely won't combo into 5H properly, so it's fine to automatically cancel directly into 2-1-4-S, and on whiffing nothing will come out, so there isn't much reason not to. And just to show off 2-1-4-S against dash block, you can see that even by itself it's a pretty strong tool with the pushback and fairly low negative frames for what the move is. Just be careful against fast long-range counterpokes, IEDs, and low profiles. While it's not the best to just spam, against a lot of players you can get away with it, or at the very least just use it to condition them into taking a risk. And when ending quick block strings from the pokes with 2-1-4-S, they get spaced out much further. Using spike in neutral is also really strong, especially since the crazy buff of bringing it to 36 active frames. It's easy for the opponent to accidentally run into it a bit too early and get frozen. If they want to get around it, they'll need to super jump, which makes it pretty easy to react to in anti-air. With the ice floor down, it does make grounded approaches better, but it also makes dash jumps more effective. And remember that it makes every hit into a knockdown better, especially 2-1-4-S, making it even better on hit and on block since they can't dash block as effectively. It is worth noting that burst knockdowns don't trigger the pop-up, and after bursting it's generally best to do H-spike or set up some other projectiles. While 236K is pretty strong generally as a tracking projectile, the initial startup hitbox before the launch has just below super priority in projectile clashing, letting it completely erase even Dragon install stunnage. Though it still does have recovery where they might not, so it's nice for counterzoning, but you still need to be careful. Since your strongest options are grounded, they'll likely start IEDing or jumping at you, so make use of 214P, JD, and IED back JS to cover the airspace, on top of occasionally waiting and reacting with 5P or 6P. Having specials that are mid and long range slashes, projectiles that cross the screen covering the ground and the air, having spikes that cover the mid and long range quickly, and a tracking projectile, she has a strong set of zoning tools. To top it off, setting up Wings of Light will make them want to approach even if they feel they could stay back and FD the chip damage for a while. And if they let you get set up, your approaches just get stronger. Here's an example of how to mix and match her tools while the ice floor is set up to keep zoning going. For pressure, 2K2D has a natural gap, and same goes for 2K236K. But 236K is plus, so when close you may want to do this over 2D if you expect them to block. When spaced, 236K is typically plus double digits, and point blank it's plus 9. 2K2D can automatically catch backdash, which is nice. But if you really want to punish backdash, 6H is much better. Probably the most common block string will just be 2K2D 214S. Charge 6H is a way to steal a turn back since it's plus 12 on block. And since it guard crushes, the strike throw is really nice. Canceling into 22H leaves you plus 9 instead, but closer, and you'll have the wing set up. But don't be afraid to tick throw from K normals. Mix that in with some space daggers, and then close the distance with her quick dash speed. Her basic string spaces you out back to the mid-range, which isn't great for pressure, but puts you in one of your strongest ranges for neutral. Since 2D is minus 10, you'll pretty much always want to cancel it, so while 214S can true string, you may want to slightly delay sometimes to see if you can catch them with frame traps. If you're a bit greedy, 236K can make you plus double digits even though you're spaced, and 22H will leave you more negative, but will change their mindset as you return to neutral. For combos, the standard 2K2D lets you get easy setups with 214K. But more typically, you'll be doing 2K2D 214S for meaty spike Oki. Since her 2P is stubby, you'll need to convert from the first hit into 6P to get 214S, but on counter hit, you can get 2K2D. A good close slash combo goes into 2H then S spike for easy conversions in the frozen state. You can just convert by going into slash and heavy slash then 214S, but it can be a bit tricky to get the right hits to connect. Going into 2S instead of far slash is easier to visually confirm into 5H. Like I talked about before, you may just want to automatically go into 214S immediately as far slash connects to be more consistent, but it'll depend on the range. Counter hit far slash combos into S spike for a better conversion. 2S into 5H may or may not trigger the frozen state. Remember, it's around the 5P range where it will trigger. If it does freeze them, you can do 2-2H and still get the knockdown. Counter hit 2S into 2H gives a much better combo. Raw 5H lets you set up 214K and continue. The charge dust combo is SH jump SHH. Here's an RC combo for 2K2D. When zoning and using 2D, you'll want to convert with a fast RC since they likely won't be in the range for the RC slowdown. From 2K2D, going into 214K, then running into them can either beat all mashing including throw, or lose to it based on how far away you knock them down from. Instead of running at them, you can jump or jump then air dash to have it hit on the left or right side. You can safe jump by doing 2D 2-2H into dash jump JH, which can also hit backdash, but you won't get a combo. You may also do 2K 236K, which hard knockdowns them far away, but 236H meaties and lets you go into the ice floor. As mentioned before, 214S will be used all the time and is going to be your most common knockdown move, and you can meaty with 236H into the ice floor. Without going into the ice floor, you'll be left plus 14 to set something else up if you want, but going into it leaves you -4 full screen with their movement limited. Keep this in mind as you use your mid-range pokes like far slash. If you autopilot into 214K, you can still go into spike then ice floor, but it's less safe, so just do 2K 2D 214S if that's what you want. Before moving on to the next video, you should get a feel for the ranges of each of her pokes. Get used to the different spots you should use each of her special moves. It'll depend on the spacing, the opponent's character, and if they're knocked down or not. Understand the basic interactions of the ice floor, and have down the basic 2D and 214S Oki setups. Thank you for watching.